I want to start off this video just by voicing my commitment to Black Lives Matter and police abolitionism. For June, I'm going to be focusing on reading Black trans authors and nonfiction about police and prison abolitionism so that that's something that I can explain more clearly and persuasively to other people. I've been committed to police and prison abolitionism since I read Assata, the autobiography of Assata Shakur, and I highly recommend it if you've never read it. If you're just hearing about police and prison abolition for the first time, this doesn't mean we're advocating for a lawless society where everyone can do whatever they want and brute violence prevails. It means replacing police and prisons with a radically different type of community organization to keep ourselves safe. And that means very, very different in terms of how it's funded, how people are trained, what the laws are and how they're enforced, how police are equipped, what their role is and what their mission is in the community. It would be so different from how police are now that it's more powerful to envision a completely new type of organization for improving our communities and keeping them safe. So I'm excited to read that in June and then report back to you guys. If you have not already, I encourage you to donate to your local bail fund, to your local Black Lives Matter chapter. If you are able, if you think that obviously going out to protest is always a risk, with coronavirus and police presence, it's especially a risk. But, you know, I'm asthmatic and I'm afraid of those things. But I went out, even though I was scared, I went to the protest here because I thought I could manage my risk enough during the peaceful daytime part of the protest. And I did flee at night because I'm a coward and I have nothing but the greatest admiration for the protesters who stayed and got arrested. But everyone has a different situation. If you cannot attend a protest in person, you can still support the movement in very tangible ways by donating supplies, offer rides to and from the protest, organize your friends to donate supplies to the protest, hand sanitizer, masks, water and snacks, medical supplies. Just sitting there and tweeting, I would ask yourself, is that all you can do to support the movement? But that does fulfill an important role if you're amplifying Black voices, especially of like Black activists and organizers. Conversations with your friends and family about what's going on and making sure that they understand the movement. You know, it can be really difficult to talk to family members who are not 100% in support of Black Lives Matter to help them kind of see the light. But I wouldn't discount those conversations, even if they're difficult and it seems like nothing was accomplished. Recently, there was a relative of mine who I got in a big fight with when the Ferguson protests were big. They did not at all understand Black Lives Matter at the time, and they were telling me all lives matter, and they were saying they disagreed with the protesters. It was a whole big fight. Now they are 100% on board with Black Lives Matter. They understand the protests. I don't know if my fight with them back then was what made the difference, but I'm glad that I talked to them then, and maybe I planted a seed. It's been one factor in helping them to kind of see the light now. Donate, find a way to get involved, support the movement. Black Lives Matter. We want justice for George Floyd. We want justice for Breonna Taylor. We want justice for Ahmaud Arbery. Sandra Bland. I'm so glad there's a huge petition going around to reopen her case. We want justice for all of them. We want to reopen all the cases of killer cops that have gotten off. But I'm also committed to saying that this bad cop whack-a-mole is not good enough. The whole policing department structure, everything, funding, it's gotta go. Abolish police, abolish ICE, abolish mass incarceration, abolish profiting off of human suffering, abolish slavery in our prisons, in third world countries. All of that's gotta go. We are hopefully at the tipping point, at the beginning of a global revolution where we're gonna finally say no to all this shit and no to oppression and no to this global police state we find ourselves living in, and give the power back to the people. That's what I hope to see coming out of this, and that's why the protests give me hope. I do want to finish up this video and share it with you guys, which is the finishing of my Asian readathon. This is going to be kind of a weird video. I decided to do my first reading journal vlog of a book, and I really think I picked a strange book to do it with. This is actually a really powerful book, but maybe a little too powerful for a read along with me vlog. So before I get started, this book, all the trigger warnings on this book, it deals with the assassination of the dictator of Pakistan, Zia al-Haq. There's mention of torture and sexual assault. state-sanctioned violence against survivors of sexual assault. Like, this is not at all for the faint of heart. All of that content is handled, I think, really well. The only trigger warning that I do feel I have to give coming from the point of the author is a trigger warning for fatphobia. So the author, or at least the narrator, we're always supposed to keep the author and the narrator separate, but the narrator portrays an awful lot of fatphobia towards the characters, to the point that it's sort of omnipresent. Like every 10 or 20 pages, there is a focusing in on someone's weight and how that is emblematic somehow of their character, right? So the fat characters are lazy and corrupt officials. That was really the only thing about this book that disappointed me with it. It was the only thing that would keep me from giving it a 5-star rating. I learned a ton of history from this book. I think the writing at times is very brilliant. I just wish the author would examine his own issues with people who have different sized bodies, which isn't actually reflective of your character. I feel like I need to really say that your body type and your body size does not equate with your value or your worth or your work ethic or anything like that. So unfortunately, fatphobia is super present across many different types of books. You see it all over young adult and middle grade books, with authors just bullying the crap out of fatter characters. Harry Potter is a great example. It's something that I feel always needs to be called out and that we need to really examine as a society and as a community of writers. I will share this vlog with you in all its weirdness. I got pretty sidetracked sometimes when I was supposed to be vlogging out the book, and I ended up just kind of showing you a bit of what my life is like in quarantine here in Houston. So maybe you'll find that enjoyable. Here's the vlog. I guess I'm recording my first ever reading vlog. I'm starting to read A Case of Exploding Mangoes by Muhammad Hanif. I'm trying to get another book read for Asian Readathon for the month of May. About a week left. So I'm hoping I can get through all this. I'll read you the blurb. Intrigue and subterfuge combine with bad luck and good in this darkly comic debut. Love a darkly comic book about love, betrayal, tyranny, family, and a conspiracy trying its damnedest to happen. I was really attracted to this book because a couple different blurbs compare it to Catch-22, which is one of my favorite books of all time. This is not my typical read. I often don't read books by men, and especially not like assassination plots, but the fact that it's darkly comedic, that was why I ended up buying this, but I've never read it. It sat on my TBR shelf for a couple of years. So I feel like Asian Readathon is a great time to take a look at this book, and I'm gonna go ahead and get started reading. I'm just here in my backyard while my daughter plays in the kiddie pool. So I just finished the prologue. It's told from the perspective of someone named Shigri, who orchestrated an assassination of Pakistan's top dictator. I guess I'll have to keep reading to figure out why. We don't know what his motivations are yet. It says that 2 months before this happened, he was punished because his roommate had been disappeared or something. I really like this line. You can blame our men in uniform for anything, but you can never accuse them of being imaginative. It's the kind of like dark comedy they were referring to. The next chapter is told in like legal documentation, so that's cool. I always love a formally innovative story, so I'm gonna keep reading. It's a very military story so far, so similar to Catch-22. It looks like it's taking place at the Pakistani Air Force Academy. It's detailing sort of some of the absurdities of military life. So the protagonist, Shigri, is describing how his roommate, Obaid, went missing. O-B-A-I-D, I hope I'm saying that right. It's clear from the prologue that he ends up blaming, he ends up blaming the dictator of the country for his roommate's disappearance, and that motivates the assassination. You're done playing in the pool? Okay, then you can go inside and shut the door, baby. So I'm really curious to find out what is the nature of Shigri and Obaid's relationship. I'm sure we'll get more of that backstory. Why does he blame the dictator? Why did Obaid go missing? And how does Shigri come to the point that he plans an assassination against the dictator of Pakistan. Oh yeah, Shigri is the master of shade. Listen to him describe the medals on this commander who's like interrogating him. Look at the arrangement of fruit salad on my tormentor's chest above the left pocket of his uniform shirt, and you can read his whole biography. A faded paratrooper's badge is the only thing he had to leave his barracks to earn. The medals in the first row just came and pinned themselves to his chest. He got them because he was there. The 40th Independence Day Medal, the Squadron Anniversary Medal, Today I Did Not Jerk Off Medal, then the second row, fruits of his own hard labor and leadership. One for organizing a squash tournament, another for the great battle that was Tree Plantation Week. I think it's funny, my husband, who was in the Army and left, is very cynical about medals and what they mean about people. And reading international books can make you feel very ignorant. So I was assuming that the general being assassinated in this book, Zia al-Haq, was fictional, but then I just looked it up, and he for sure was a real general who died in a plane crash under mysterious circumstances in 1988, and there's a ton of conspiracy theories about it. So it is intended to be just a work of fiction, like putting forward a possible conspiracy theory for how this could have been done. It's not like attempting to be historical reality, just sort of a fictional imagining of who might have carried out that assassination. That's not a piece of history that I had ever learned about. The amount of Pakistani history taught in American public schools is negligible. Learning stuff already, and that's pretty cool. We get a really lovely characterization of the guy who's gone missing, Obaid. He's sitting in the cell after he's been arrested on suspicion of something to do with Obaid's disappearance. And he says, what chance would Obaid have had with this second OIC? Baby O, the whisperer of ancient couplets, the singer of golden oldies. How did he make it through the selection process? How did he manage to pass the officer-like qualities test? How did he lead his fellow candidates through the mock jungle survival scenarios? How did he bluff his way through the psychological profiles? All they needed to do was pull his pants down and see his silk briefs with the little embroidered hearts on the waistband. Where are you, baby O? Obaid is like just this delightful soft boy, possibly queer, because when another officer was removed from the base, he was trying hard not to cry. So I'm wondering if Obaid is queer. I don't want to assume that just because he has like feminine qualities and is emotional, but I did want to mention I spotted a few different instances of fatphobia already, and we're already on page 33. There's descriptions of like failed, incompetent generals being equated with the size of their paunches and their bellies. Same with the dictator of the country and his wife. There was just like a joke cracked at her expense for being fat. Fatphobia is very omnipresent in literature, but still always disappointing to see. Something I like about the book so far is sometimes the author is including Arabic and not translating it for English readers, which I always think is totally valid and fair, and go for it. Like in my book, my editor initially wanted me to translate all of the Yiddish until I explained to her that that trick of like putting something in Yiddish and then translating it into English makes it sound so, I don't know, like after school specially, like it just, you don't need to accommodate people who aren't from the culture. I kind of almost like this moment of uncertainty of like, oh, like a reminder, like all of the nuance and context of this book will be lost on me because I'm not Pakistani American and I'm not Muslim and I don't read Arabic. The same I felt is true for my book in Yiddish. If people really want to know what all the Yiddish means and they're not familiar with Yiddish, they can go look it up and learn something. Anyways, that's something that I appreciate in the text so far. Right now we're getting the perspective of the general who has become addicted to consulting the Quran in order to make even like very small decisions about his life, using religion to abdicate responsibility for decision making, and coming from a brutal dictator who's like ordering executions of people and leaving it up to like flipping through the Quran and pointing to a random phrase to make those decisions. That's a problem. That's not good. That's not a good form of religion. So sweaty. But it's nice outside, like it's 90 degrees here. But listen to the cicadas, and sometimes birds come to our bird feeder up there. So I don't really want to go inside, even though I'm so sweaty and red. So it's like 7 a.m. My daughter wakes me up around this time every day. I've got her settled with some Easy Mac, and I got my coffee, and we're gonna read some more mangoes, and I'm getting really sucked into this book. It is definitely in the tradition of, I shouldn't say in the tradition because it's a Pakistani author and I don't know what he's read and if they're his influences, but it definitely reminds me of Catch-22, Kurt Vonnegut, that tradition of like absurdist military literature. But what's interesting is the protagonist in this one is actually very passionate about the military. He's not considering it to be total bullshit. He seems to love his squad and loves like everyone, all the other like drill sergeants are all about like screaming in people's faces and stuff and saying what they're gonna do to your mother. And this guy is in, he does a silent squadron. So he does like a silent drilling where he doesn't say a word to his men, but they still like run through their paces. And he's like passionate about that. He like thinks that's really cool. So he's not totally disillusioned with the military, but we still don't know why he wants to kill the dictator and how the dictator is connected to his missing roommate, Obaid, Baby O. But I'm very curious about that, so we will keep reading. Okay, so Shigri has just been taken by the like country's secret police, or the ISI, which does not sound good, and he suspects them of orchestrating his father's suicide, which apparently was not maybe so much a suicide. Seems like he's in a bad situation and things are getting pretty tense. Here's 76 pages in. We're getting introduced to a new character, a new point of view. Arnold Raffel, an American diplomat. Oh, thank you. You're making a surprise. Oh, wonderful. Can't wait.
Can't wait to eat out.
I like that Hanif, he really does a great job maintaining tension. And I just feel like I'm learning from that as an author. Like, he's constantly reminding us of the impending assassination. The next time General Akhtar stood on an airfield, he would be in a uniform. He would not want to board the plane, but would be forced to do so out of sheer reverence for his chief. And that would be the last order he would ever obey. So what's interesting is he's not just reminding us of the impending assassination, because doing that continuously would be tedious, but he always gives us a little bit more information each time. And this time the information we're getting is that General Akhtar must have known the assassination attempt was going to happen, because it says he would not want to board the plane, but would be forced to do so out of sheer reverence for his chief. And so now another little added layer of mystery. Why? Why would how did the general know about the assassination attempt? And why would he choose to get on the plane anyways? So I just think that's pretty masterful, and it keeps happening. And it really keeps me like sucked in. It keeps teasing the reader along with these little mysteries getting revealed drip by drip. So I really appreciate that. I just wanted to show you guys my surprise breakfast. It's delicious. Thanks, baby girl. Okay, so my niece and I biked down to the Bayou, which is particularly full of garbage today because it rained last night. Well, it's not too bad over here because there's that boom. And I'm gonna keep reading, just learn some really interesting American history and how it intersects with Pakistani history, that the popular female anchor woman Joanne Herring was involved in drumming up support among conservative Republicans in Texas for the war, the proxy war in Afghanistan between Pakistan and Russia, including sending out invitations to a fundraiser carrying a picture of a dead Afghan child captioned with "Better dead than red," which is an incredibly fucked up way for a Lufkin, Texas socialites to spend their time. I want to Google that and find if I can like verify that. Yeah, so our protagonist Shigri is currently being held by the ISI for interrogation. Things are not looking good for him. We got a little bit from the perspective of General Zia's wife, who was upset about seeing a busty picture of Joanne Herring with her husband the dictator. So that's where we're at. And I'm gonna read here for a little while. It's nice and cool. It rained last night, so it's not as hot as it normally is in Houston in May. We have been visited here by a great blue heron and this very ferocious egret, who is a vicious hunting dinosaur predator.
Big boy neck.
Big boy neck. Oh, no luck. Just listening to how nice the cottonwoods sound. Oh, we got a turf war going on. The great blue heron just showed up and kicked this egret out. It's like, no, buddy, you are not getting my fish. Poor old egret, disgraced. A young upstart has come to challenge. Ooh, it's bold though. It's not scared of the heron. There's gonna be a confrontation here. Big boy original heron came back and the great blue is immediately like, fuck out of here. We do not like you. Like the little one, they were chilling side by side for so long, but the great blue really doesn't like that big boy. This is so much bird drama. I love it.
Snuck back over there.
I'm here for it. Oh, the little guy. The great blue is like, this is my dominion. Why are y'all challenging my authority? Oh my god.
Big boy neck.
So much. Oh, tall boy neck. Look at that neck. Yeah, sometimes this one sticks his neck up high, and we love to see it. Great blue's given up. They're both like creeping up on him. Look. It's like when your big sibling is like, don't come near me. And then the little kids start like creeping up, seeing what they can get away with. The heron is the king.
Whoa.
And or queen. And or royal. Monarch. There we go. There's a gender neutral royal term for a bird. It's been nice. Yeah. Be safe out there. Wear protection. Face protection, head protection.
Sanity protection.
Sanity protection. Is that books?
Yes, and
I
also
love
being
that.
outside.
Also being outside is sanity protection. That's right. Okay. Be safe, y'all. Is this a great day for wildlife or what? We found this turtle on the bike path. It's alive, don't worry. It had its head out. So we're gonna let the buddy go closer down by the water so it doesn't get smushed. But it doesn't need to be up on the bike path. That's not good for it. No. All right, bye, little turtle buddy.
Okay, I'm tired. One more. All right, last one. Last one.
Mama, what's that?
No, I'm gonna sit down for a second. Oh my goodness.
Found a great little patch of really diverse flowers, and I thought I'd show you some of my favorite Texas wildflowers. Yeah, on the way to bike somewhere to read. It's still a reading vlog, I promise. All right, so just in this little patch along the bayou, there's a ton of great biodiversity. We've got Gaillardia puchella, the firewheel. It also has a less PC name. This is purple horsemint, it's known in Texas. Up north we call it bee balm, so that's a kind of bee balm that's native down here. We have, of course, a bunch of our lovely bluebonnets, and so it smells absolutely wonderful here. I can't find any really tall bluebonnets. They cut this field pretty recently, so everything's just kind of growing up again. I guess they cut it to give it a second bloom. I forget what these little jobbies are called. They're like a kind of black-eyed Susan, but they've got this pretty red right here near the petals. And what else do we have? I have no idea what this hot pink lovely is. Wow, what a pretty flower. I don't think I've noticed that one before. I saw a pink evening primrose. They're almost spent. Here's some. These are my daughter's favorite flowers, the lovely pink evening primrose. And we just get zillions of them in April, but they're almost done now. And you can see there's just tons of flowers in this field, a bunch of black-eyed Susans and sunflowers there in the distance. The sunflowers around here are really huge. Oh, there's some salvia right there. Some red salvia. Yeah, gorgeous. So a little more urban nature watching for the vlog. I'm gonna keep biking to U of H and do some reading there. Well, I'm here now at University of Houston, which is completely abandoned. It's like a ghost town, but they've kept the grass cut and they're still running the fountains. And I found a very lovely old oak tree to be sitting under and reading under. It's pretty hot, so I don't know how long I'm gonna last out here. But it definitely is easier to read in the heat than trying to read inside the house, where the kids are always being so loud and needing snacks and cups of apple juice and stuff like that. So the biking and reading thing seems to be working out. I might have to try that with writing as well. So yeah, I'll do a little more reading and tell you what I read about in a little bit. I suppose I'll get it over with. I have a terrible tattoo. I'm not going to tell you the story right now. It's like in the process of being erased though, so you might notice that it was never finished. It's a whole story, but I got 3 laser removal sessions under my skin before the pandemic happened and laser removal got shut down. So this will be gone someday, hopefully. I've been trying to keep it off camera, but y'all are going to see it eventually. Okay, let's read. I hope the white noise from the fountain isn't too much. It's quite nice for me. Maybe it'll be nice for you. It feels nice to be on a university. Universities are so great. I went here for grad school. I got my degree to become a principal, which I'm never going to use because the main thing I learned in that program was that being a principal was not for me. All my classes were in that building right over there. Grad school. That's a blue jay. That's a grackle. The blue jays are the ones that go ah, ah. And the grackles go wee. And they're in these trees over here. They make so much noise. Sometimes they sound more like robots than birds. Grackles are invasive, but I love them very much. They have so much personality. I don't know how you couldn't love them. So this part is absolutely infuriating. So trigger warning for sexual assault. So the general has called one of his like spiritual advisors in Saudi Arabia, or he was a judge in Saudi Arabia, and the general is getting a bunch of international flack in the press about the stoning of a woman accused of adultery. Whew. And they're talking about how you figure that out. So General Zia says, how do we establish whether she is telling the truth? I mean, sometimes you can look at a woman's face and tell that she is a fornicator, but we need legal procedures to establish it. Kadi spoke as if he had thought about this for a long time. Women always make this excuse after they are caught fornicating, but we all know that rape is not easy to commit. The perpetrator would need at least 4 accomplices. There will have to be 2 men holding her by the arms, 2 pinning down her legs, and then the 5th one between her legs committing the act. So the answer is yes, a woman can be raped and it's a serious crime. So the woman will be required to recognize all 5 culprits in court, Zia asked. It goes on. The men who are holding her down by her arms, maybe the woman would not be able to recognize those two, and the judge can make an exception. It encourages us to use our common sense. Your common sense is that it takes 5 men to rape a woman. I'm assuming that if Muhammad is writing this, he has some basis to think that there are people in the world that think like this and talk like this. It is not so different from our own. I'm not trying to say this is like a Muslim thing. This is a men thing, a cis men thing. We have legislators in our country who want to say that women can't be raped because the body shuts it down. Never concede that a woman has been raped. I mean, it's really not that different with some of the ridiculous things our legislators have said in this country. I'm gonna listen to the fountain. I'm gonna keep reading. This isn't like the easiest, funnest summer reading if you can't tell from all the torture and everything. Oh God, it's just horrible. And this woman who's gonna be stoned for the crime of adultery, we just found out was gang raped for 3 days and 3 nights. And that is what they're gonna stone her for. Oh, it's a lot to stomach. It's really, I don't know, shit like this goes on. This book is often making me feel really dense. I just got some important information. It's a flashback, and Shigri is talking about a time he took the American drill instructor, who's a CIA plant, I figured out that much, up in an airplane to try to figure out who had killed his dad. Something about $25 million going missing. But they're talking in like coded military speak. And again, this is not like my usual kind of book that I read. I think that he's saying, you know, Zia made this money go missing, and either Shigri's dad was investigating it too much, like he was sniffing around too much, and so they killed him and made it look like a suicide, or he was responsible for losing the money, and so that's why they did it. He lost $25 million, and it was like nothing to the Americans, but to the Pakistani government, that was quite a bit of money. But I don't really know which it is. It's so nice here on campus, and it's so empty, and I don't want to go back to my house because I'm so sick of being there. Oh, I wish I could stay here and read forever. But it's not fair to my sister-in-law who's watching the kids. This is like one of the last few decent days we're gonna have. There's a little bit of wind. It's like 85, gonna get up to 90 today, but not quite so humid, not quite so terrible. But next week is June, and it's gonna be quite a few months of suck. Probably till mid-October. Too hot to maybe bike all the way out here. So enjoy it while I can. I gotta go bike home now, so I'll read more tomorrow. Another early morning read with everybody still sleeping, except for my daughter, who's settled with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, spoilers at this point, just found out that Shigri and Bayou were indeed lovers, or at least they hooked up once. And I had sort of just wondered about that, and I'm glad that they were. I mean, I love some queer representation. The scene where they hooked up was surprisingly touching, even though it came right after Bayou had kneed Shigri in the stomach. They were fighting, but then they kind of hooked up, and it was nice. It was sweet. This chapter that comes next is from the perspective of Zainab, who's the woman I talked about earlier who was gang raped and then is on the docket for being stoned. And so I'm sort of dreading this chapter because I think it's going to be horrific and very hard to read, and be seeing the world from her perspective. So onwards. So it's the last day of Asian Readathon. A lot going on in the news today and the last few days. And I'm not sure it's appropriate to be making content right now, but I think promoting diverse books and reading diverse books is still great. So I'm going to finish this book today. Time to explore some horrific history from the other side of the world that our country is also deeply enmeshed in. Catharsis is coming because the dictator eats it. Okay, so my final word on the book, like I said at the beginning, really the only thing that disappointed me about this book was the frequent fatphobic descriptions of characters. That aside, I learned a ton of history. I learned that I really need to go and do more research on, but I learned about the involvement of Texas socialites in Pakistan's proxy war against Russia in Afghanistan. It's so close to home and it's so abhorrent, and it makes me see how our world is so much more corrupt and connected than I know. And the more you learn, the more connected and corrupt you find out that it is. I will say this is kind of a nice book for these times because the general eats it in the end. Maybe you're craving to see a book where a leader who is cruel, narcissistic, and egotistical, and totally uninformed, totally out of touch with the people, get clusterfucked by multiple different assassination attempts at the same time. If that sounds like it would be cathartic to you in this moment, then this book will be the book to read. I did find the ending very satisfying. This is the one spoiler I won't give you, there is something heartbreaking that happens at the end. And I was like, man, you were so close to giving us like such a cathartic sort of happy ending. And yet then you had to go and do something really tragic at the end. But I know why he had to do that, because these brutal, awful men that come to power, they take our innocence and they do so much collateral damage. And this book, I think, wouldn't have had as much integrity if you hadn't, as the reader, felt that cost at the end with what happens and with this sort of random, brutal, tragic ending that occurs. So on the one hand, it is cathartic, and it's also a reminder of how much damage and cruelty and mayhem an incompetent leader can do. If you enjoyed this video, awesome. I'll ask you one more time, do what you can to donate to your local bail fund, Black Lives Matter chapter, anti-racist organization. Support the protests, support the movement. Let's bring down all the fucking generals, all the brutal dictators, all the cruel, narcissistic, fascist, corrupt leaders of this world that have their boots on the people's necks. Let's throw them off. Let's show them who really has the power. If we stay in solidarity, we can make it happen. Black Lives Matter, no justice, no peace. I hope you have a great week. Keep the fight alive. See you next time.